The digital clock on Joe's car dashboard read 2:13 a.m., casting an eerie green glow throughout the vehicle. Rain splattered against the windshield, mimicking the irregular rhythm of his heartbeat as he sped down the highway. A long night shift had drained him, and the only thing he craved was the warmth and security of his home. The storm outside painted the night in shades of darkness, and the tires whispered along the wet asphalt. But as Joe approached the ominous stretch of road, his mind couldn't shake the unsettling stories that locals whispered about this infamous highway. It was said to come alive with spirits when the moon was high, and only the bravest dared to travel through it at night. The sound of rain and the wind's mournful howls became a haunting soundtrack to his journey. The road stretched on endlessly, a narrow path that seemed to lead into the abyss of the night. Then, out of the shadowy darkness, a dark figure emerged. Joe kept repeatedly blinking, thinking that his eyes were playing tricks on him. As he drove close, he saw a young boy, soaked to the bone, dressed in clothes that belonged to another era. His thumb extended, signaling for a ride. Joe's heart quickened, but he couldn't leave the boy stranded in the pouring rain. He slowed down and pulled over. The boy climbed into the passenger seat, his clothes dripping with rainwater. He said nothing, his face concealed beneath a curtain of wet hair. Joe tried to break the silence. "So where are you headed?" The boy turned his head slowly, his eyes obscured by his hair. His voice trembled as he spoke, as if every word weighed heavily on his soul. "Just keep driving, mister." Joe followed the boy's directive, his unease growing with every passing mile. The boy's presence was eerie, and he began talking about a tale of an abandoned house and a mysterious person, sending a shiver down Joe's spine. "Can you tell me more about this house?" John asked, struggling to make sense of the boy's fragmented narrative. The boy's words grew increasingly disjointed, as if he were trapped in a nightmare. "It's a place of darkness, shadows, and whispers. I had to escape." As they reached an isolated crossroads, the storm outside intensified. Lightning painted jagged streaks across the sky, casting eerie, fleeting shadows within the car. Thunder rumbled, causing Joe's heart to race. The boy's head turned, and his wet hair slipped away, revealing his eyes. Those eyes were hollow, devoid of life, and filled with an overwhelming sorrow. John's hands tightened around the steering wheel, and his foot pressed the gas pedal to the floor. He needed to escape from this nightmare. The car accelerated, leaving the haunting figure behind. The storm began to subside, and the radio, which had previously emitted eerie static, returned to normal. Joe's breathing slowed, and he finally looked into the rearview mirror. The boy had vanished, and Joe was alone in the car. He couldn't explain it. Was it a hallucination, a product of exhaustion, or something far more supernatural? The memory of those chilling eyes, the haunting whispers, and the unexplainable young boy. The haunted highway had become more than just a local legend. It was now a part of his own life's narrative. Joe arrived home, but sleep remained elusive. The ghostly encounter had left an indelible mark on him. He began researching local legends, discovering stories of others who had experienced some malevolent presence on the same highway. The boy with the hollow eyes and his ominous message seemed to be a recurring figure in those encounters, as was the inexplicable vanishing act. Haunted by the experience, Joe could never look at that highway the same way again. It had become a place where the boundaries between the living and the supernatural blurred. The memory of that stormy night and the mysterious encounter lingered. The haunted highway, with its tales of the past and the unexplained, remained a place of intrigue and uncertainty, a place where the living and the dead brushed against one another. Rain fell in unrelenting sheets, hammering the windshield of Michael's car as he navigated the winding road. It was 2:34 a.m., and he'd been on a cross-country road trip for days. The stretch of highway he now traversed was different, though, notorious for its sinister legends. The clock on the dashboard cast green glow, while the night, shrouded in storm, stretched on infinitely. The road seemed never-ending, and the towering trees on both sides seemed to loom ominously over the highway. Michael's grip tightened on the wheel as he pressed forward, intent on reaching his destination. But something about the road's desolation and the unsettling stories he'd heard unsettled him. As he drove deeper into the heart of the storm, he could feel the isolation closing in around him. Then, a peculiar sign appeared on the side of the road, pointing to a town called Blackwood. It seemed like the perfect opportunity for a detour, a chance to break the monotony of the highway. With a sense of curiosity, he decided to follow the sign down a narrow, winding road. The fog descended quickly and visibility shrank to just a few feet ahead, and the feeling of isolation became suffocating. He realized he had ventured deeper into this foggy maze without any clear sense of direction. Panicking, he tried to turn the car around, but the road itself seemed to resist his efforts, leading him in endless loops. The fog was relentless, and the silence was broken only by eerie whispers that filled the car, soft and indistinct, like ghostly voices from another world. Ghostly figures materialized at the roadside, their forms shifting in and out of focus. They reached out, their pale, spectral hands extending into the fog as if beckoning him closer. Michael's heart raced, and sweat dripped from his brow as the figures seemed to multiply, an army of otherworldly beings drawing nearer. Fear coursed through his veins, and in a desperate bid to escape, he slammed his foot on the gas pedal. The car roared forward, and finally, the road straightened out. The fog began to recede, and the nightmarish landscape behind him faded into the distance. As he glanced in the rearview mirror, Michael could hardly believe his eyes. The road that had led to Blackwood had vanished entirely, as if it had never existed. He was back on the highway he had left behind, the road unwavering, with no sign of the winding, fog-shrouded maze. Shaken to his core, Michael continued his journey, haunted by the mysterious town of Blackwood and the vanishing road that had nearly consumed him. He couldn't shake the feeling that he had glimpsed something otherworldly that night, and the memory of that encounter would stay with him for the rest of his days. Hours later, as the first light of dawn began to break, he pulled into a small, rundown gas station. The attendant behind the counter eyed him with a mix of curiosity and suspicion. "You look pretty shaken up, like you've seen a ghost," the attendant remarked, a sly smile playing on his lips. Michael, still trembling from the night's ordeal, could only manage a weak nod. "You have no idea." Rain pounded the windshield, creating a distorted view of the winding road. Lisa's heart raced as she gripped the steering wheel, a map of tension in her knuckles. The car's interior was bathed in a ghostly blue glow from the GPS, which had long since lost its signal, leaving her adrift in the heart of a dark, desolate countryside. The road seemed to stretch on forever, with no signs of civilization in sight. The rain showed no mercy, and thunder rumbled ominously in the distance, adding to Lisa's growing unease. She muttered impatiently to her unresponsive GPS. "Come on, work, please work." The screen remained blank, leaving her with no choice but to navigate the treacherous road alone. But as she continued on, an eerie mist slithered out from the adjacent fields, rolling in like a malevolent wraith. It obscured her vision, enveloping the car and turning her world into a realm of shadow and uncertainty. As the mist thickened, Lisa's unease deepened, and her eyes darted between the road and her dead GPS. She was trapped in a nightmare, the relentless rain acting as a drumbeat to her growing dread. Then, an anomaly emerged from the gray haze. Up ahead, a silhouette materialized, a lone figure standing on the side of the road. The stranger's clothing clung to their form, drenched and heavy, and their trembling thumb gestured for a ride. Lisa's heart quickened, torn between compassion and fear. With a hesitant sigh, she made the decision to pull over. The stranger quickly climbed into the passenger seat. The dampness clung to her and water pooled beneath her on the car's floor. "Thank you," the stranger whispered, her voice bearing a heavy weight, each word quivering with an undisclosed burden. Lisa's eyes darted to the hood that concealed the woman's face, casting her in a cloak of shadows. "Where are you headed?" Lisa ventured, her voice trembling like the leaves on a tree caught in the storm. The stranger's gaze remained fixed on something outside the window, and the silence in the car grew thick and suffocating. "Is something wrong?" Lisa pressed, her voice now on the edge of panic. Suddenly, the stranger turned her head, and her hood slipped back to reveal her face. Lisa's breath caught as she met the woman's hollow, lifeless eyes, twin voids that seemed to promise a descent into an abyss of terror. "Turn back," the woman hissed, her voice taking on a malevolent tone that seemed to claw at Lisa's very soul. "Turn back now." Terror gripped Lisa. She slammed her foot on the gas pedal, the car roaring to life as she swerved back onto the road, leaving the chilling passenger behind. Her heart thundered in her chest as she raced down the rain-drenched road. As the mist gradually dissipated and the rain began to relent, Lisa dared a glance in the rearview mirror. The passenger was nowhere to be seen, and Lisa was alone in her car. The world seemed to breathe a sigh of relief as the nightmare faded into the past. Still trembling, Lisa reached the nearest town and parked in front of a small, dimly lit diner. The neon sign buzzed overhead, casting a flickering, eerie glow on the wet pavement. She stepped out of the car, her legs unsteady, haunted by the ghostly encounter with the malevolent mist and its ominous passenger. As she entered the diner, the sense of foreboding followed her. She couldn't shake the feeling that she had brushed against the supernatural that night, that the woman in the mist with her hollow eyes and chilling warnings had left her with a lingering sense of unease, an unanswered question that begged to be solved.